buttons to figure out. There we go. How's everybody doing? You're all doing better than me. You can turn something on. Anyway, hey, welcome. We are so excited about today. Before we get into today's message, I've got two quick announcements. One, if you know much about me, you know that I'm a huge fan of our local police officers, what they do, how they protect us. And so I just want to ask you, we had an officer who was shot, Joseph Ford, I think is his name. Is that right? Yes. I just would ask that you would pray for him. Pray for his family as they walk through that. They have such an important and yet at the same time very dangerous job. And so would you remember him in prayer? Second thing is this, as we walk through this series, I really try to anticipate questions. I try to anticipate, your pushback and what you're going to say and, what about, and Nick, you don't understand, and circumstances and the whole deal. And what I acknowledge is when it comes to love, sex, and dating, there's too many different stories. There's too many different unique situations. There's too many different questions. And so as we walk through this, I want to encourage you, if you have a question, or maybe I say something that you think is just really inflammatory, or you really don't line up with, or you don't understand, or whatever that is, it really doesn't matter. There is no limits to the questions. I want to encourage you to do something. Would you text the word handles to 31996? You're going to get a text message that's going to give you an email link. We did it that way so that you would be completely anonymous and we would have no clue your question. But at the end of the day, we're going to do something that we've never done before as a church. 4 weeks from today, both Lisa and I are going to stand up here or sit up here, and we're just going to have a Q&A session. That's going to be the whole message. We're going to answer your questions and make sure that at the end of the day, your questions are heard, your questions are answered, because here's what I know. Your relationship and your foundation with your spouse or future spouse, how you prepare for that and how you deal with that post is everything. Matter of fact, it's only second to your relationship with God, and yet what I believe and what I see, what I experience as a pastor every single day is brokenness, heartache, pain, frustration, loss, when it comes to marriages and relationships. And so we want to make sure that we hear and we answer every question that we possibly can. And so if you've got a question, I'm talking, you're like, whoa, what about? I want to encourage you to text the word handles to 31996. Y'all ready for today? All right, yeah. Hey, I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray that I'm going to get calm, and we're going to roll into this. God, we just thank you so much for this time, but thank you for this day that we get to come together. We thank you that it is not raining. We thank you for the rain, but we've had enough. And so we thank you for that. And pray for Joe and his family right now as they walk through that. God, I pray that you give him healing and peace. And we pray for this next few moments that you would speak through the message that you've given me, that you would give me the words to articulate hope and grace and mercy to every relationship and every person and every situation that sits in this room, that they would feel your presence and that they would feel your voice speaking to them in a relevant, simple, and real way. Love you and thank you so much. Amen. Well, for me, love, sex, and dating, I kind of came onto the scene a little bit late. If you know much of my story, I entered into high school and I never dated anyone. Really, I was the most logical, linear, focused young man you could come across. And that wasn't about school, unfortunately. So I wasn't a good student. I was all about sports, and particularly wrestling. I ate so that I could maintain a certain weight for wrestling. I lifted weights in such a way that I would get stronger but maintain a certain weight for wrestling. I went to the gym. I went to wrestling practice. I went to freshman practice, and I went to senior practice. I did as much as I could for that. And my senior year, I became captain of the wrestling team. I was getting ready to do that. It was going to be an awesome year. Everything in my life was around wrestling, that there was something about physically locking up with another guy and just kind of doing that. There was something appealing about it. I wanted to win. I wanted to dominate. And I loved wrestling. It was my single focus. And then I saw her. And I thought, man, I'd like to wrestle her, okay? Seems like that's a different level right there. I'd like to do that. All of a sudden, my focus shifted. And the very logical, linear, self-disciplined, focused young man that my parents are like, they were so proud of me. It's like that just went out the door. I don't know about you, but maybe you have similar situations. I wrote down, I was texting with Lisa because she's away for the weekend. I was texting her last night saying, hey, can you just remind me of all the dumb, stupid things I did in the first few months of our relationship? And she's texted back, do you have enough time? I was like, no, I don't think I do, but shoot me some of them. Because if you were to take a snapshot of me in that first 6 months or so, I would be unrecognizable. I look back at it and think, who was that? Because I wrote them down. Here's what I said. Number one, I asked her to marry me 3 weeks into our relationship. Anybody else do that? Nope, just me. I'm the only stupid one. Okay, done. Thank you very much. That's awesome. Yeah, I feel really good. I skipped wrestling practice and I missed a meet. As captain of the team, I missed a weigh-in, I missed a meet. Yeah, coach was not happy. I was busy. Anyway, I wrote her notes. I wrote love notes. This is embarrassing to even say. I want you to know how much I love you all that I would share these things, okay? But I went down, and Lisa still has some. I would take little pieces of paper, and I would write things like, oh, I missed you from class. You know, like, and then I would fold it, and then I would write initials. This is so embarrassing. I would write LS for Lisa Smith. She wasn't Lisa Smith, but it was like, oh, I love you so much. We were so in love. It was so disgusting and sickening. It was ridiculous. When you ask a girl to marry you 3 weeks into your relationship and you're 18 and still in high school, guess how much money you have for a ring? Nothing. So here's what I did. We were at a Walmart or a Kmart or something like that, and they had toe rings on sale for 50 cents. Ladies, one day, you need to find a man who will spend 50 cents on your toe ring. So I wish I was making that up, but that's a true statement. What makes it worse is she wore it proud. She's like, look at this. All of our friends are like, you're sick. To make it even worse, though, I wish that was the worst engagement ring story I had for you, because a little bit later on, I bought her. I went to, I think it was Zales or someplace like this, Case Merchandise, something like that. And I bought a ring for her, and we went in there, we picked it out, and I bought it that night. I put it on layaway. I'm like, I'm going to pay for it. I got home that night, realized I had to buy books for school. I couldn't afford that ring. I had to take it back. You know how embarrassing it is to ask for the ring back? Be like, hey, honey, I love you, but I need math, okay? I'm sorry. I got to go to school to get educated. It's terrible. But maybe one of the most embarrassing things that I did in the first few weeks of the relationship with her was I had scheduled a trip to Florida for spring break before we started going out. I would have never scheduled it if I'd have known we'd done it. But I spent 7 whole, long, agonizing days away from her, and oh, I missed her so. It was disgusting, all right? And I had the brilliant idea of, you know what? We had this long drive back to Illinois. It was like 20 hours. I sat in the back of my mom's van, and I wrote her a poem. How many of you would love to hear that poem really quickly right now? Yeah, put your hands down, you bunch of pagans. I'm not reading that. Now, actually, so I tried to look it up last night. I couldn't find it. I think my wife lost it. We got in a discussion about that. And so if you want to hear it, I absolutely will read it. Pray that Jesus loves you more than me, and I find it this week. So I'll do that next week, but I wrote her a poem, and it is disgusting and disturbing. I rhyme words like thee with Lisa Marie. It's maybe the worst thing ever written in life, but here's the crazy part. I not only wrote that, I thought it was good. I typed it up, I color-coded it like a rainbow, and I gave it to her. Do you know why? I was high as a kite. I mean, I was about as lit as they possibly come in that moment on that ride back. And not with drugs. I've never been high on drugs. I've never done a drug in my life. That's not the issue. Not with alcohol. I've never been drunk or even tipsy. No. I was what they call love drunk. And I didn't know now what I knew. I didn't know then what I knew now, which is that's a real thing, isn't it? That's a real thing. And as we start this series, Love Handles, where I want to go today is I want to set a foundation. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say some stuff that if you've been with me for very long at all, is going to be somewhat of a repeat. But I feel like what happens is we've got to have something to get our hands on. We've got to have something to hold on to. Because what happens is there are waves of drugs that hit us. And if we're not careful, if we don't have something to hold on to, those waves will wash us away. The undertow will drag us out to sea, and we will drown. We will die. In fact, in this room right now, I could stop. There's story after story after story after story of heartache, of pain, of bad decisions, of mistakes, of moments where you look back and you go, what was I thinking? Why? Because you didn't understand, you didn't have a handle on what was happening in your world at the time. Because see, here's the deal, and I think there's probably more, but there's 3 things that really happen to you when you meet the love of your life. Well, let's just pause. There's 3 things that happen to you when you meet somebody you find attractive. Number 1 is this, drugs. There's a reason they call it love drunk. There's a reason that they walk through that. There's a reason it's the book of love. It's the love potion. Because here's the deal. There are 3 drugs, and I want to walk through them because I want you to understand this. You don't have to be a Christian. If you're watching online, you're like, man, where's the whole God thing? We're going to get to the God thing towards the end, but you need to understand how God made you so that you can see what God commands you. And the problem is we hear the commands without the clear calling of how we're made, and we miss it and we mess it up. But at the end of the day, God made you in such a way that when you meet somebody, dopamine just fires like crazy. For those of you that don't know what dopamine is the pleasure center of your brain. There's this part of your brain that has that drug, and the moment that you do something that your body likes, it says, do it again, do it again, do it again, do him again, do him again, do her again, do her, do it again, over and over and over again. It's the pleasure center. And here's the deal. It reinforces, and you, don't miss this, you feel great. It may be a terrible relationship, but you feel, oh, it's amazing. Dopamine kicks off, it's the pleasure center. Endorphins, it's the pain center. It's the exact opposite, but used in the very, very same way that when you meet somebody, when you're like, oh, I love them, oh, they're so great, oh, they're so attractive, and you're like, oh. Not only dopamine hits off for the pleasure center, your pain center hits off. Matter of fact, endorphins are so powerful, they're studying them from a medical standpoint to see if they can leverage endorphins in medical procedures to help with pain management. It's that powerful. And the reason this one comes off is because isn't it true? You find somebody, you meet them, and then you break up. You break up with them, and all of a sudden, what are you in? Pain. And you're hurt. You can't believe it, and they were the love of your life. And I know you're only 14, but it's okay. You know, the whole deal. And you're in pain, and it hurts. And so what do you need? You need a hit. You need a hit of that endorphin. So what do? You just find somebody. You don't even have to be anything special. That's why some of you have a hookup weekend. That's why you have a one-night stand. It's why you look back and you think, I don't know what I was thinking. I just needed somebody. It was a rebound. They even call it that. Why? Because medically, that's exactly what's happening. There was a wave, there was a flood of drugs that kind of hit your system, and if you don't understand it, if you can't have a handle on it, all of a sudden, you're just picked up in emotions. You're just swept up in the moment. You're going, I just need somebody. Let's just go to the bar. Let's just go to find somebody. I don't care who it is. Just find somebody. I just need somebody. Because you're hurt. And your brain is wired. God designed you in such a way. This is intentional. This is on purpose. It's not a bad thing. It's just how you're wired. That you're wired to want to rebound. You're designed to find somebody, anybody, please give me somebody, and you're going to get that hit. The last one is oxytocin. It's pleasure, it's pain. Oxytocin, they call that liquid truth. It is the most powerful one. It is a high that is just ridiculous. And it happens. It happens to you when you meet that person, and all 3 drugs, it is a cocktail of drugs. It's why when somebody says, man, those 2, they have so much chemistry, it's like, yes, on a level that most people don't acknowledge. They're high. Oxytocin has, the reason they call it the truth, liquid truth, is because it's so powerful, it actually has the power to rewrite memories. It's the cuddle drug. It's the drug that kicks in right after you sleep with somebody and you sit there and you cuddle them, and all of a sudden it's the bonding drug. It's the same drug that comes out after a woman gives birth to bond them with their baby. It is the strongest drug there is. And it is designed in such a way to connect you, to attach, to be the glue in a relationship. And again, there's nothing wrong with any of these things. These are actually good things. They're how God wired you. This is biologically. And again, you don't have to believe in God to kind of understand, hey, this is what happened. And some of you can look back and you're like, yeah, I felt great. It's a drug. And it lasts 6 months to maybe a year, depending on how you use them and how your body. It's why in high school, if you remember back in high school, Think about all the relationships. How long do they last? 3 to 6 months. You know why? Because they found somebody and they had chemistry and they're like, oh man, she's hot, he's hot, let's hook up, let's go out. And they go out for a little bit and whatever, and then the drugs start to wear off and like, oh, he's no longer hot, but she's hot. Let's go after her. And they get high off each other, going from person to 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 person. Using them physically, biologically, for their own purposes. Happens all the time. We use each other chemically all the time. That's the first thing that happens when you meet somebody. Not good, not bad, just what it is. Second thing is this. Man, hormone levels increase. And again, if you've never heard this, maybe this might explain a weekend for you, but here's the deal. If you're a dude, the moment you meet her, your testosterone level does not go up. Your estrogen level does, okay? It's why, ladies, when you meet somebody new, he'll talk to you for 3 hours at night. You're like, he's so sweet. No, he's high. No. He's not sweet at all. No, he's a big girl. That's exactly what he is. He's a big girl. His estrogen level is through the roof. He'll carry your purse to the mall, and you're like, oh my goodness, let me tell you what he did. Lean in. It's going to last 6 months, and it's going to go back to normal. Here's the deal. I'm being silly, and I'm being serious at the same time. If you don't know this, if you don't understand what's happening biologically, chemically, you're going to miss it. You're going to come to some incorrect conclusions about who they are. But when you start dating somebody, guys, man, your estrogen level's through the roof. You'll carry the purse. You'll talk on the phone. You'll cuddle. You'll hold hands. Oh, you're the sweetest person in the world. It's a big, fat lie. Welcome to River Lake Church. Your relationship is a fraud. Yeah. So, no, let's make it worse, because ladies, here's the deal. It affects you too. Your estrogen level doesn't go through the roof. No. Your testosterone level goes through the roof. You are more aggressive than you will ever be. I have literally had conversations like, dude, she is so awesome. She played football this weekend. Enjoy that. It's a one and done, okay? You got like 3 months left of that, and it's done. Nick, man, she loves playing video games with me. We played Halo last night. No, she didn't enjoy that. No, she's high, okay? No offense. If you're dating a girl, she's like, let's play Call of Duty. Wrong answer. No, that's not, no. It's not true. It's a myth. Here's the deal. She will never be more aggressive, and here's the deal. Don't miss this. This is why the first 6 months, here's what most couples do. Have sex and talk a lot, have sex and talk a lot, have sex and talk a lot. And then after 6 months, after 8 months, what happens? We don't have as much sex. Well, we don't talk as much. We don't talk as much because we don't have as much sex. And all of a sudden, the drugs go back to normal. The hormones go back to normal. And all of a sudden, you're no longer high and you're no longer elevated in your hormones. And all of a sudden, you're kind of like, oh, I'm with you. You're okay. Matter of fact, maybe some of you feel like you were tricked. You're in a relationship or marriage right now, and you're like, that's not the girl I dated. That's not the guy that I dated. He was something different early on. She was something different early on. And that is actually medically, biologically true. The last thing that happens to you when you introduce and you have a new relationship is incredibly important, and this is the reason for so many mistakes. It's this: heart rate. Now, this applies to everything, not just relationships, but it's really, really important when it comes to relationships. They've done scientific studies, and again, we're not talking about God yet. We're not talking about the whole deal. It's just telling you, hey, listen, this is just kind of what happens to everybody. When your heart rate goes over 120 beats a second, or a minute, not a second. If your heart rate goes over 120 beats a second, you're dead. Okay, so you don't have to worry about any of this. Just go ahead and click off. We're done. So, no, 120 beats a minute. They've done studies, when it goes over 120 beats a minute, your cognitive abilities up here goes through the floor. Okay? Let me try to illustrate this. The best illustration I can use is football. I love football. Who's the best quarterback ever? I will. We're going to have an altar call. All you pagans are going to get saved today, okay? Aaron Rodgers, punk. Anyway. And Aaron, if you're watching, actually call me, man. That'd be really cool. Anyway, so I'd love to talk to you. No, here's the deal. Quarterbacks, if you watch football, and you have to understand football to understand this. Some of you have said to yourself, you can watch the quarterback, and here's the deal. It happens all the time. High school, college, pro. The quarterback in practice will look amazing. Is all the throws. He'll do all the right things. He will look amazing. And then, all of a sudden, that's why they call people that got clutch. It's that it factor. Fourth quarter. All of a sudden, the pressure's on. And you got to score that drive. And I don't know how much you know about football, but it's pretty scary being the quarterback because there's 11 other men that literally want to tear your head off. Their whole goal is to tear your head off. They're big men who bench press and squat for the sole purpose to tear your head off. And they get ready. And there's 80,000 people in the crowd. And they're screaming, ah. The clock's counting down. And you say hike. And all the linemen are coming at you, and there's 100 things going on. And your heart rate goes up. And the quarterback, who in practice is amazing, in the drills is unbelievable, who has all the talent, all the skill, all the benefits, everything goes, and he throws it in the dirt. Or he throws it to the wrong guy, like happened in the Super Bowl for Tom Brady. Anyway, okay. They won, by the way. No. And everybody in the audience, when he makes that bad throw, here's exactly what they say, especially guys. Okay, ladies, you may not be able to resonate too much, but hopefully you're tracking. Every guy says the same thing. What was he thinking? He wasn't. He couldn't. It's how he's wired. It's how you're made. That when your heart rate goes over 120 beats per minute, you can't think. This is really important for your marriage or your dating or your relationship. Because this might explain some of your biggest regrets in life. Because here's what happened. Let me just predict some of what happened to you. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you said, there's no way I'm crossing that line. There's no way. I'm going to go to the party. I'm going to hang out with them. Well, I might even drink a little bit. I might do a little bit, but there's no way I'm going to cross in whatever line you have morally, sexually, physically. There's no way I'm going to cross that line because at 3 o'clock, guess what? Your heart rate's not high. You're not as excited. Your endorphins aren't quite that high because you're not next to him or her, and you're in a good place, and you set a boundary. And then you go to the party, and you're there, and you start to kiss him or her, and you get a little bit excited because it's excited, and she touches your hand, and you touch her hand, and your heart rate goes through the roof. You wake up the next morning. You think to yourself, can't believe I did that. What was I thinking? Can't believe I crossed that line. I never intended to do that. I never intended to go there. I never intended to make that move. I got caught up in the moment, and I made some poor decisions. It just happens. Doesn't make you a bad person. Doesn't make you immoral in any way at all. It just means that, you know what, you didn't understand your body. You didn't understand what happens to you biologically. You were high as a kite. You were drugged up beyond belief, and you cross some boundaries. You had a wave of feelings, emotions, and a cocktail of drugs, and you had nothing to hold on to, and so it just kind of swept you away in the moment, kind of swept you away, and our biggest regrets, our biggest mistakes are because we just didn't understand what happened to us biologically. So for the rest of our time, I want to give you 3 truths, 3 things to hold on to that, again, I can't fix your past, but hopefully what we can say today can ground you in your present and protect your future. Because while I'm going to repeat a lot of this stuff, every year I have people sit in my office, broken, either wanting to get a divorce, already gotten a divorce, wanting to get remarried or whatever, and they break one of these 3 rules. And then they wonder, why do I feel this way? So, in light of the fact of all this, I want to give you 3 things. Number 1 is this. You're high when you're in love. You're high. And we just got done talking about that. You're high as a kite. You really, really are. You will never feel probably more emotionally connected to your partner, your spouse, than the first 6 months to 8 months of your relationship. That's just a fact. You're high. You can't control that. You can't turn it off. You can't turn it on. You can't recapture it. You're high. And here's the deal. Here's what I want you to see. Being in love isn't bad. It just makes you blind. Be in love. I'm in love. I adore my wife, Lisa. She's amazing. She's awesome. Listen, be in love. The issue isn't it's bad to be in love. If you're in high school, the issue isn't it's bad to be in love. That's okay. You just need to acknowledge what everyone else sees. You're blind. You're blind. Again, it's why you look back at some relationships, right? And you look back in your late teens or early 20s or whatever that is, and maybe you even said this to yourself. You think back of a relationship, you see a picture on Facebook or whatever, and you think to yourself, oh my goodness, what did I see in him or her? The answer is nothing. You were blind. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. But if you don't know it, if you're not aware of it, if you walk through life thinking, no, I'm fine. See, it's not bad to be blind. It's just bad to be blind and not know it. That's when you trip and fall. That's when you make mistakes. If you're walking confidently through a place thinking you see when you really don't, that's when you hurt yourself. But when you first start off, you're blind. See, here's the deal. We miss their flaws because of our feelings. Because again, and maybe you've had this, somebody looks at you, a friend, and says, hey, I'm not sure that that's the best relationship for you. I'm not sure that that's the right move. I'm not sure. And you sit back and go, oh, you don't know them like I do. Oh, I know that they have massive amounts of debt, a record, that they have a whole bunch of other problems with them, but you don't know them like I do. They're special. You're blind. Here's the deal. That's not bad. But you will miss their flaws. You will miss the flaws of the person that you're with. Why? Because of the feelings that you have. And feelings in our culture seem to always trump flaws. And no one's perfect, and that's what you'll say. But here's the deal. Your feelings, I love this quote from Andy Stanley. Your feelings are real. They're just not reliable. They're real. Listen, I want to be very clear. I'm not trying to invalidate your feelings. Matter of fact, I'm trying to validate them. I'm trying to say, no, you absolutely felt that way when you started dating him or her. You absolutely felt that way about your spouse. That's not a bad thing. You feel that way. Some of you are in a relationship right now. You feel that way. I'm not trying to validate them. What I am trying to say is this. You can't rely on them. That's why if you're part of a church, it's so important. If you're part of a small group, it's so important. Why? Because they're going to look out for you. Because they're not blind. And they should have standards, and they're going to be able to speak to you. It's why teenagers, here, listen to me. If you're in high school or middle school or college, listen, just lean in. If you get anything else, get this. You can't trust yourself solely. You can't do that. And I'm not trying to say you walk around and be like, hey, Dad, I'd like you to arrange a marriage for me. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, that's what my kids are going to do. But anyway, you do whatever you want with your kids, okay? No. But here's the deal. I hear it over and over and over and over again. My teenage son, my teenage daughter, they're dating somebody, and I don't know what to say to them. It's like I can't get through to them. Of course you can't. They're blind. You're here today, and you're in a relationship, and your parents who love you more than him, who's been in your life a total of 3 months, who love you more than her, if they're telling you there's a problem, would you just pause? I'm not trying to say that your parents are even right. I'm not trying to say that you should break up with them. I have no clue. I don't know them. What I'm saying is there's a chance, especially if you're early on, that you're blind. See, here's what I want you to see. If you can't see with the people who love you the most, your parents, your best friends, your church, your pastor, if you can't see that in the people who have been with you the longest, your parents and they have known you for years, then you're blind, not them. If you find yourself distancing yourself from a parent because of a new spouse, because they're trying to warn you, I'm just telling you, would you just pause? Maybe get an outside opinion. Maybe ask somebody else, because there's a really good chance. There's a really good chance that you're the one that's blind, not them. Just telling you. You're high when you're in love. And if you don't have a handle on that, if you just think, oh no, this is special, you're going to miss it. Which is actually the second point that I want to make, which is the second thing that we kind of do. They're new, not special. I really just wanted to insult everybody in here. So just so we're clear, no one's special. Here's the deal. I don't mean this negative at all, but listen, not one person in here, there's no one special. Disney tells us find the one. I got to find the right one. I hear, Nick, I don't know if they're the one. There's no one. I promise you. In fact, honestly, you are biologically, chemically, spiritually, emotionally, and relationally compatible with millions of people. It means you can be with millions of people and still be happy. Try saying that to your wife and see if you get, a hug that night. It's not sexy at all, just so we're clear. But here's the deal. So the person you're with isn't one of a million, they're one of a million. I'm just telling you guys, don't use that as a pickup line. Not cool. All right? But it's true. I absolutely adore my wife. I do. She's my world. I would be happy with many different people. It's not based on her. I adore her. But there is no one. God gives us choices. God gives us abilities. And I'm grateful and thankful for her and would do anything for her. But at the end of the day, my peace, my joy, my happiness is not based on her. We're going to come back to this in. She is not able to carry and withstand the weight of all of those expectations of being the one. We live in a culture. It's all about the one. I got to find the one. You need to understand. They're just new. But what happens is, let me just tell you let me predict, because some of you're on your second or third or fourth marriage. Let me tell you exactly what happened in your relationship. See, you got together and it was like fire. It was like, it was everything that we talked about. Had the long conversations, did the whole thing, had sex. It was great. Loved them. Ooey gooey. Got married. Awesome time. And then, listen, here's the deal. Over time, they got old. Not physically, but that's not the point. And here's the deal. You found somebody new. And all of a sudden, new emotions crept up in you hadn't felt in years. All of a sudden, the cocktail of dopamine, endorphins, and oxytocin, all of a sudden, that came flooding back, and you're like, ooh, I feel something. And all of a sudden, you start to tell yourself, they're special. If I could be with them, I would be happy. If I could get rid of the current person I'm with, if I could find a reason, if I could justify, I don't even know if I need to justify, if I could just get rid of them somehow, and if I could get with her or get with him, then I'll be happy because, man, they're special. Why do you think that? Because of all the cocktail drugs. It's so fascinating to me. People leave relationships over and over and over again because of how they feel. It's irrelevant how you feel. I hear people sit back and say, Nick, I think I made a mistake in my marriage. I think I married the wrong person. I think it's a mistake. I just need you to hear me. And we're going to unpack this in a few weeks, a little bit more. But the moment you said I do, your mistake became your marriage. Period. And there is no outs. There is no kind of things. The moment you said I do, your mistake became your marriage. And here's the deal. Listen, that person that you're with, some of you right now, you're married right now, but there's somebody else on your mind. There's some other woman, there's some other man, and they're at work or they're at home or they're on the internet or whatever that is, and you're lying and you're going, oh, they're so special. If I could just be with them. I'm telling you, they're not special. They're just new. And what happens is people move away from the current relationship, find somebody new, only to get a year into that marriage, 2 years into that marriage, and realize, man, I'm in the same place. Why? Because it was never about the person. It was all about you, and the drugs wore off. And now you're in your second marriage or your third marriage. And you're wondering, man, did I make another mistake? Man, is there somebody else? Man, they used to make me happy. See, we make fun of high school kids all the time from going from relationship to relationship every 3 months, but we just do it as adults. We just do it instead of 3 months, 3 years, 13 years. We have the same immaturity. We need to grow up in how we see love. And we miss that. I'm telling you right now, if you're here today, the single greatest thing you can walk out of here with, if there's somebody else in your mind, is to believe, is to hold on to the handle of truth, that they're not special. They're just new. And that will wear off. Last one is this. Who you have an attraction toward in life is random. Really is. How much traction you give them is intentional. Okay? So let me break this down for me, okay? Who I'm attracted to is random. I don't control that. I didn't wake up one day and be like, listen, I would like to be attracted to 5'2", brownish, blue-eyed women that, blah. I didn't do that. Who I have an attraction to is completely random. In fact, here's the deal, just side note, I still have attractions to other people. Who I have an attraction to is random. There's still other people that go, yeah, that's an attractive person. That's an attractive person. Yeah, absolutely. Who I have that towards? Random. You have no control over that. None. Some of you feel guilty. You have no control of that. Don't miss the next part, because this is where we mess up, though. How much traction you give them is intentional. It's one thing to look at a person and go, wow, they're attractive, and move on. And just keep walking. Because at 10:15 or whatever it is, 12:30 as you're at lunch, you can't control when you walk into Applebee's or wherever you go, that person's attractive. You have no control over that. Here's the deal. Whether you sit at lunch and you look at them twice or 3 times or 4 times, where you go mentally and emotionally with them, what you think about and what you process, you have an incredible amount of control. That's intentional. That's a whole different level. But let me just tell you right now why this is so important. Because I hear from people all the time, Nick, you can't control who you love. Oh, you absolutely control who you love. You absolutely control who you can't control who you're attracted to. You absolutely control who you love. And here's why. It's a statement. I say it all the time. Feelings follow faithfulness. Every time. Feelings follow faithfulness. Every single time. There is not another option for this not to work. Your feelings always follow your faithfulness, to which I'm going to predict your pushback. Nick, you don't understand. I was married. I used to love them, and I don't anymore. And you want to know how that happened? I'm going to tell you every relationship how that happened. When you started dating and you were high as a kite, you behaved a certain way. You held her purse. You bought her flowers. You wrote stupid rainbow-scented poems. You did a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm telling you right now, when you started dating him or her, you didn't wake up, you didn't go, oh, I love them. No, that's weird. And if you did, you're creepy. Stop it, okay? No. You dated them, you're like, they're attractive. But then you started behaving a certain way. You started going on dates with them. You started to pursue them. You started to kind of wear certain makeup and wear a certain perfume and dress a certain way and say a certain thing. And, oh, you're so sweet. And, just like a whole bunch of stuff. And all of a sudden, you woke up one day in the relationship. Several months later, not in the beginning. Several months later, you woke up one day and went, I love them. You know why? Because feelings follow faithfulness. But I'm going to tell you, the same way that you fell in love is the same way you fell out of love with your spouse. Because here's what happens. And the story is the same. Oh, the details are different. The story is the same. Nick, we got a new person at work. And I'll tell you, I don't know what happened. You can't control who you love. We just fell in love. And I always push back and go, no, let's rewind a little bit. Because my assumption is this, you probably noticed them and were attracted to them. You can't control that. But then all of a sudden, you started wearing your best outfits around them. And you made sure that if there was an elevator, you made sure that you timed the elevator just perfectly to kind of go up with them and, oh, this is so awkward. We're standing here. Oh, it's crazy. It's like the something, And you faithfully wore that perfume that he liked, and you faithfully listened to all his stories, and you faithfully laughed at his jokes that were terrible, but you laughed. You're so funny. Don't tell anybody I said that. You were faithful over and over and over again. You faithfully fantasized about them mentally. And I'm not just talking about sexually. I'm just talking about you faithfully fantasized about the conversations you're going to have and what you're going to do. You were faithful in so many things way before you were willing to risk your marriage. Because when you first saw that person at work or at church or at home or online or on your Facebook, when you first saw them, there was no way that you were going, man, she's worth risking my marriage. He's worth half my income. They're worth my kids hating me because we got a divorce. There's no way you thought that. No, you just thought they're attractive. But you were faithful. You faithfully thought and behaved and listened and had a lunch and then another lunch and then another lunch and then another lunch, and all of a sudden you woke up one day and go, I don't love him anymore, but I do love him. You throw your hands up in the air. You go, I can't control who I love. You absolutely do. You were faithful. You just didn't see it as that. You faithfully cheated on your spouse mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. You quit telling your spouse all about your problems and you told the person at work. Because your spouse was the problem. And you were faithful. You wake up one day. I can't control who I love. See, here's what I want you to see. If you're here today and you're not in love with your spouse, it says more about what you haven't done than what they have. I'm just telling you. Because I've heard all the stories. It breaks my heart. I've been pastor 16 years now, 17 years now. I've heard all the stories. There's probably nothing you can share with me that's going to shock me. And every one of the stories is, Nick, if you understood her, she does, and she does, and she does, and she doesn't, and he used to, and he used to, and he never, and he always, and he da-da-da. It's always them. But her over here, I'm telling you, they get me. I think I made a mistake. I think it was a problem, but they get me. No, you're high as a kite. And if you fall out of love with your spouse, it is 100% about what you have not done for them, not what they have. You know why I know that? Because here's the deal. I have seen people in terrible relationships that I look at them and think, how do you do it? And they go, I just love them. You know why? Has nothing to do with what their spouse does. Has everything to do with that spouse continue to love them and serve them like crazy. That spouse, irregardless of whether they love them, they kept making them coffee in the morning and making sure they served them and make sure they loved them and make sure they took care of them. They kept doing their part of it. Because every single time, I'm telling you, it's no different. Feelings follow faithfulness. Every time. So those are three truths I want you to hold on to. Those are three things that just, if you can get a handle on that, if you start a relationship or if you're married, I'm telling you, there will be a day, if it's not even right now, that you will find somebody you're attracted to. And you will think to yourself, she's hot. He's hot. He listens better. She's more attentive. I like her. You can hold on. Hold on to the fact that no, you're high. No, you're not really in love, you're in lust, and you're high. If you can believe the truth that, you know what, I know it feels one way, but they're not special. They're new. The newness will go away. And the fact that you can just throw out that myth that, you know what, you can't control who you love, you absolutely 100% control who you love. You can handle the wave of emotions. You can have a successful relationship and a successful marriage. In the spite of statistics that say our culture is filled with brokenness and divorces left and right. You know why? Because they don't understand how God made them. Now, speaking of God, because I've talked for about 30 minutes now and not mentioned God. For all the people that don't believe in God, you're like, I love this church, okay? For the rest of you, you're like, I thought it was a church. Let me ask you a question. If you were God and you made everybody this way, and I believe that God made us this way. If you were God and you kind of designed people, you set them up biologically like this, you did that, and then you looked ahead and you thought, oh my goodness, they've blown it, they've got so confused. They've confused lust and love. They've confused biology and what happens to them for a short period of time with what it really means to love somebody. If you were that God and you looked ahead, what would you say to people? Paul tells us. Paul writes this thing that some of you might have even had at your wedding. There's irony in that. He says this is what God says in spite of all this. He says, love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy somebody else's marriage and relationship and what their spouse does for them and what yours doesn't. It does not boast on Facebook. Look at how amazing my husband is. He's so awesome, blah, 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 blah. It is not proud. Next slide. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. And it keeps no record of wrong. I'm going to tell you right now, if you could just do that one, you're golden. Just so we're clear. We're going to get that later. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. And then he says something so important. Because all of those things are action words, right? None of them are feelings. Paul doesn't write this, he goes, love is the ooey gooey. Love is the long distance phone calls that you paid $57 for because it wasn't free 20 years ago. Love is just, it's the wave of emotions. No. He says, you want to know what real love is? Love's in action. And then he says this, it always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. To which you read that and think, Nick, that's not possible. Are you kidding me? You want me to always persevere? Have you seen what she does? Have you seen what he does? God's going, yeah, I'm omnipotent. I know all that. Yeah, I looked ahead. You're good. Yeah, I saw that. Always. You know what another word for always is? Faithful. Faithful. You can replace always faithful. It faithfully protects in the light of what you want to or not want to do. It faithfully trusts, even when it feels like they're lying, even when it looks bad, even when they have lied in the past. It faithfully trusts. It faithfully hopes that, you know what, it may not feel it right now. It may be terrible right now. It may not be what I hoped for right now, but I'm going to hope for a better future. I'm going to trust in a better God that's going to bring us forward. It faithfully hopes and it faithfully perseveres. Because here's the bad part about your relationship. It will not always be roses. It will not always be amazing. It will have seasons where you wake up one morning, look at your spouse and think, dang it. I've had those mornings. Don't tell her she's not here this weekend. Now she knows. I've told her that, okay? Those conversations did not end well. But it faithfully perseveres. And Paul wraps it up with 3 words that are so incredibly important. He says, when that happens, when you are faithful, because feelings follow faithfulness. Feelings always follow faithfulness every single time. When you do the action, see, here's the deal. When you do that, he says this, love never fails. Ever. Ever. And there's not a single qualifier in that whole statement. Not one. Not one qualifier. See, here's what I want you to get. Here's the biggest thing. Who you love is more about your patterns than it is your partner. Really. Who you love, who you're in love with is way more about your patterns than it is your partner. And here's why. Because it's not dependent upon them. It's not dependent upon them in any way at all. We keep thinking if I could find the right person. Paul says, no, you want to know what love is? Love is about what you do, not who you find. It's about your patterns. It's one of the reasons why, do you know why arranged marriages have a higher success rate than non-arranged marriages? And I'm not supporting that, again, except my kids. But anyway, do you want to know why they have a higher success rate? Because you have no clue and you have no control of the person. But you know what you do have control over? Your patterns. So they walk into it going, I don't know what kind of Yahoo I'm going to get. I don't know what kind of person I'm going to get. I don't know what kind of problems I'm going to get. I have no clue what it is. But I can control my patterns. I can't control them, but I can control my patterns. And because I can control my patterns, I can control my feelings. Some of you are here today and you don't feel in love. I want you to know this should be the most encouraging thing for you because you're in control of that. Oh, it's not going to happen in an instant. You can't go home and, make your wife dinner and it like fixes everything. No. We're gonna unpack some other stuff, some next steps in the next several weeks. But I want you to know what I say to every couple when I do marriage counseling for the very first time. We unpack this for the very first time. This is my first session, so here you go. It's all free. You control your relationships. And I don't care how you feel. It's irrelevant. I don't care what you think about your partner. They're irrelevant. What matters is you. And the most encouraging, uplifting, hopeful thing you can know today is that you're in complete control of your marriage. You're in complete control of how you feel. And it doesn't matter what they do for the most part, and it doesn't matter what happens. And there are exceptions, and we're going to walk through those. But if you are faithful, I'm telling you, love never fails. Y'all stand with me. This week, I want you to do 2 things. Number 1 is this. If you're married or you're in a dating relationship, I want you to ask your spouse one question. What is it I can do to be a blessing to you? What is it I can do to be a blessing to you? And you know why you ask that question? Because it's about your pattern. You can stop doing this. I hate it when you do that. You can start doing this. I love it when you do that. And then start doing it. Whether you're in a good marriage or in a bad marriage, whether you love your spouse or you don't love your spouse, I'm telling you, you need to ask this question. Because it doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter where you're at right now. It can all be gone in a moment. In a flood of emotions. And if you're not ready to handle it, you will lose it. Last thing I want to say is this, though. Some of you here today, you've got a handle on your relationship, but it's crushing or has crushed the person that you're with. Because you grabbed a hold of somebody to fill a need and a hole that God was designed for. And you go from relationship, maybe to relationship, or maybe you're married right now and you're just crushing them, because here's the deal. You want them to be something for you that only God can be. And so you're leaning on them. You got to hold them. You're like, Nick, no, I trust them. I'm leaning. And you're crushing them. And you're crushing the relationship because they were never made to carry the weight of you. It's not how they were made. Only God was made to do that. See, some of you, you need to let go of your spouse, of your girlfriend, of your sex life, of your relationships, whatever those things are, and trusting in that to provide you hope and healing. And you need to grab a hold of God, that He is the one that says, I will never forsake you nor let you go. I have come to give you life and life to the full. I have come to be for you what you need, and He is everything. And when you have that firm foundation, when you have a foundation with God, everything else falls apart. You can love your spouse when they don't love you. You can walk with them when they're not perfect. You can deal with the heartache and hardships. Why? Because you're not leaning into them to support the weight of what you need. No. You're leaning into a God who can carry you easily. So I want us to bow our heads. Would you everybody bow your heads? I don't know where you're at. Some of you, maybe you've walked away from God. Maybe you've walked away from God and you're here today and you're like, yeah, you know what, Nick, I've been looking for love in places I shouldn't have. I haven't been leaning into God. I haven't been leaning into my spouse. I've been faithful in some other areas, and I've been faithful walking away from God. And you need to come back to God. Maybe you were saved at a young age, and you need to come back to God. You need to make that commitment. I'm going to give my life back to you. And for some of you, you need to give your life to Christ today. You've never done that. You keep looking for other people. You keep looking for the right woman or the right man, and you believe the myth that, man, if I can find the right person, then I'll be whole and happy, but you've never been able to do it. It works for a while. If that's you, I want to pray for you, but would you do something really quickly? If you're either coming back to God or you need to give your life to Christ, would you just raise your hand really quickly? I want to pray for you. It's awesome. Let's pray. God, we give our lives to you. Thank you for your grace and your mercy. I pray for every marriage and relationship in here that you'd be with them. You would help them. You'd guide them. And they would lean into you, that they would handle the wave of emotions, the flood of a world that is hostile towards our important relationships, and that they would grow up and be mature. They would be able to handle the wave, the drugs that hit our systems. God, help us be faithful to you and faithful to our spouses and faithful to our futures. And in the process of waiting, trust in you. We love you and we thank you so much. Amen. Hey, have a great week. Next week, we're going to continue. See you then.
Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. Every word will be accomplished. Yes, it will. Nothing can stop it. You are the God.